Welcome, everybody. This is the Tom Sumner program. I'm really happy to be introducing my guest this hour, who has, his books are read all over the world so far. They've sold more than 300 million copies, making him one of the most popular children's authors in history. If I just say the word Goosebumps, you're going to know I'm referring to R.L. Stine. Bob, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks, Tom. Nice to talk to you.
And I couldn't help, I was looking at your website, poking around a little bit, and looked at some of the, it's just some of the bullet points of your biography. And I was surprised to find an interesting kind of continuity thing. It sounds like you have a comic book project coming up with Marvel here in the near future. And
it's
yet
done. It's out. It's out.
It's out already?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
But yet early on you wanted to do comic books, but didn't think you could draw.
I couldn't draw at all. I had no talent. That's why I'm a writer. Otherwise, I'd be drawing stuff. No, I brought in my drawings. I did little comic books. I'm 9, 10 years old.
Yeah.
And everyone says, those are horrible, those are awful, and they were right. And I realized I couldn't draw. So I just did this series, this 5 comic book series for Marvel about this swamp monster called Man-Thing. It was kind of a life's dream, you know. I finally got around to doing a comic book. So that was a lot of fun. I picked their ugliest character. He's hideous.
In the Goosebumps series now is 25 years old. There's 130 titles. Is it?
Oh, see, now I have to go take a nap. You mentioned that number.
I was. That's exactly what I was going to ask you, Bob. Does it, when you hear numbers like that, does it surprise you? Do you spend so much time writing that you really don't realize how much time is passing?
Yeah, well, one thing, I wouldn't know what else to do all day. I'm so used to it, right? So that's the thing. The whole thing surprises me because when we started out, I said, let's do 2 or 3 of them. The funny thing is, I mean, I didn't want to do Goosebumps. Tom, that's the kind of businessman I am, right? I didn't want to do it. And then finally my editor, I just thought it was too young, and I was doing a teen series called Fear Street, which I still am. And I thought, it'll mess up Fear Street, and I didn't want to be bothered. And then my editors just kept after me, and finally I said, okay, well, let's try a couple. And now it's 25 years later.
And it's had
quite
huge popularity in film and television. Is that attracting more people to the books? Are you getting more young people to read because of the video?
Oh, yeah. Oh, man, because of the movie, the Jack Black movie from last year. The power of the movies. It's amazing.
Is it really?
Look, it's a 25-year-old series, and after the movie came out, the Goosebumps sales, we're there. We're basically a 90s series, right? That's when Goosebumps was at its height. And then after the movie, it just skyrocketed. We had the original Slappy book, Night of the Living Dummy, was in Amazon's top 100 all through Christmas.
Wow.
It was amazing. The book sales just tripled because of I like movies.
Had you ever fantasized about who would play you in a movie?
Well, never. I never did. But, there was big debate about who should play me when they were, starting when they got the idea that I'd be a character. And I went to my son, actually. I said, Matt, who do you think should play me in the Goosebumps movie? And he said, Morgan Freeman.
Oh, that's funny. That's
not very
funny.
helpful, but very nice. And then a lot of people on Twitter, I'm on Twitter all the time because it's a great distraction, right, from writing. And a lot of people said, well, you should play yourself in the movie. Who could play you better than you? And I went to my wife, Jane, and I said, Jane, a lot of people think I should play myself in the Goosebumps movie. And she said, you're too old to play yourself. Tom, how horrifying is that? Too old to play yourself.
Oh, that's funny. And,
That's cruel, right?
and
And of course she was right.
and then how did
Anyway,
Jack
Jack
Black enter the picture?
I don't know. I have no idea. But he was terrific. He's such a nice guy, too. He's really just a great person as well. But we had a lot of fun together. We really did. I thought he was perfect. He was mean in the beginning. He was very mean in the beginning of the film. And there's one there. But I was so pleased. You know, movies, it could have been terrible, right?
Right.
I didn't have any real control. Could have been awful, but it turned out good.
And there's
So
another
that
one
was
on the
nice.
way.
The only thing I didn't. You want to hear? Here's the only thing I didn't like in the Goosebumps movie.
Okay.
There were all these Stephen King jokes. I was like bragging in the film. Well, he's not as good a writer as I am. He hasn't sold as many books. He's so jealous. I hated those jokes because, one, I'm not like that at all. I would never do that. And, I have great respect for him. And so I tried to get him to take out some of those jokes, the Stephen King stuff.
Do you know who Debbie Maycomber is? She's a writer, and she's had just a ton of titles. But they're, East Coast sewing circle type things. And I asked her once who had written more books, her or Stephen King. And she said, I think I have more titles, but I think Stephen has written more words. Do you do that? Do you do that kind of math? Do you think, how many titles do I have versus somebody else?
Writers aren't competitive. Writers aren't competitive. That's all crazy. Most writers are very supportive of other writers. They know how hard it is. Writers are very nice to each other.
And a lot of people wouldn't know this unless they looked into your background and read your biography and so on. But you actually started out writing humor.
Yeah, I only wanted to be funny. I never planned to be scary.
When did you want to start scaring people?
Farthest thing from my mind. What?
When did you decide to start scaring people?
I didn't decide. Tom, everything that's happened to me was either an accident or someone else's idea. I did a humor magazine for 10 years called Bananas for Kids and wrote about 100 joke books, and I thought that was my career. And then I was having lunch with a friend who was editorial director at Scholastic, and she said, I need someone to write a teen horror novel. Go home, you can do it. Go home and write a book called Blind Date. She even gave me the title. And I had no idea what she was talking about. What's a teen horror novel? But I said, sure, no problem, right?
Right.
And I ran right to the bookstore to find out what other authors were doing, what teen horror was all about. And I read some stuff and tried to decide what I could do differently. And I wrote this book, Blind Date, and it came out, and it was a #1 bestseller.
Wow.
And I've never been close to that list, And I thought, forget the funny stuff. I'm going to be scary. It wasn't my idea. And then we did another one. It was #1, and turned out kids like to be scared. So I've been scary ever since.
I thought maybe they stopped laughing at your jokes, and so you decided to get even.
I don't know if they ever started.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. There's another Goosebumps movie on the way.
I hope so. I hear rumors. There is a script, I know. So, yeah, they're talking about it for September 2018. I think Jack is on board again.
Do you get to...
It's very weird being a character in a movie, Very strange thing.
When you were doing the research to decide, once you had this assignment to write Blind Date, you kind of researched and looked what other people were doing and tried to do something different and hopefully better.
Right.
What had you been influenced at all? Had you ever had an appreciation, like a lot of young people growing up, for horror or mystery? Were you?
Yes. No, my brother and I were like every Saturday morning we'd be off to see a horror movie at the movie theaters. We loved horror, and when I was a kid, there were those great comic books, Tales from the Crypt and The Vault of Horror, and I loved those. Were very influential on me because they were scary and funny, and so I loved it. I'd always loved horror. I just never really thought of writing.
And now that you are writing it, where do the ideas come from?
I don't know. They come, I work backwards for most authors. I don't really try to think of ideas. I try to think of good titles. And then the title will lead me to the story. I almost never try to come up with another idea. I was walking my dog in the park, and this title popped into my head, Little Shop of Hamsters. Great. It's a great title, right?
Almost.
Good. So I'm walking. Then I'm thinking, well, how do you make hamsters scary? Are there 1,000 of them, or a giant? And then that kind of leads me to the idea. And that's mainly what I do. I mainly I start with titles, which I think is backwards for most authors.
Are there universal themes, things that creep people out that you visit or revisit in different ways?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I've done 130 books. I think there's 6 plots. No, but there are. I mean, we're all, in all ages, too. I mean, fear of the dark, fear of going down in a dark basement, fear of being somewhere you've never been before, fear of losing the person you were with and suddenly finding yourself alone. All that. That's been, forever. People always ask me, well, have kids changed a lot? Do you have to change your books? And I always say the technology has changed a lot, but all the fears stay the same.
There's so many titles under the Goosebumps umbrella. Where did the idea just Goosebumps come from?
Where did the title come from?
Yeah, just the idea of saying these are all going to be Goosebumps stories.
Yeah, well, we needed a series title. We knew we were going to do a series, and but I didn't have a good title for it. And I was reading TV Guide, and in those days, TV Guide had the listings in the middle. All the TV shows for the week were in the middle of the magazine. And I'm thumbing through it, and there was a little ad on the bottom of the page, and it said, it's Goosebumps Week on Channel 11. And I just stared at it. That's where it came from. They were showing scary movies. I just stared. I knew it was just the right title because it's scary, but it's also very light. It's not terrifying.
And that's one of the things about a lot of the stories that you tell, Bob, are like sitting around a campfire telling stories, which kind of became one of the ways that the video presented the Goosebumps stories. Because I remember my kids grew up watching those stories and reading the Goosebumps books, and but it was something that the whole family could do together.
Right.
Do you hear that from a lot of people?
Yes, I do. I like it. The other thing I hear, which I never get tired of, is that my kids didn't read at all before they discovered Goosebumps.
Of course.
And then I found them one night reading under the covers with a flashlight. I love that story, too. The whole series is about getting kids to read. It's not really about terrifying kids, right? It's not really what I want to do. It's all reading motivation. There's nothing else in these books. There's no morals of any kind. There's nothing to learn. You don't get any information out of them or anything. They're all just for entertainment. To say, look, kids, you can pick up a book and just be entertained. That's what they're about.
Is there a rhythm or a cadence, a way that a story unfolds? That is there a similarity between telling a funny story and telling a scary story?
Yeah, I think so. For me, there is because every single chapter in a Goosebumps book ends in a cliffhanger or ends in some kind of shock. So when I write a chapter, it's like writing a joke because it ends in a punchline. I know where I'm going. I know what the punchline is. And so the chapter it's just like writing a joke.
Is it the element of surprise that links those two things, do you think?
Yeah. I think what kids like about, and what I like about the books, what I try to do, is have so many twists and turns and surprises. That's all I care about are the surprises. And I think kids like Goosebumps because it's not linear at all. It doesn't just tell a story. You'll be halfway through it and say, oh, no, I didn't realize that. Well, that changes everything. It's all not what I thought it was. That's what I try for.
You also said that when you were in school in the 50s that you were not a great student. Did that change for you as you got older?
Nope. No, I always just wanted to get to my writing. I started when I was 9, and I always just wanted to get home and be typing in my room and write. And I was, I was lucky I could get B's without even trying. I was a solid B student, and school pretty much bored me. And I really wanted to write. Also, I was very shy, and I was a very fearful kid. And so I was uncomfortable in school. And it didn't change later when I went to Ohio State. I know I'm talking in Michigan here, but I went to Ohio State.
And admitted to being a huge football fan. And we won't hold that against you, though, Bob.
Yeah, thank you. But all I did in college, in those days, every university had a humor magazine. They all had humor magazines. And that's all I did in college. I was editor of the humor magazine at Ohio State for 3 years. I almost never went to class.
Well, unfortunately, I wish we had a lot more time because I'm enjoying talking to you very much. Do you like interacting, Bob? Do you like interacting with people and doing book signings and those kinds of things? A lot of writers.
That's one of my favorite parts. Yeah, it's one of my favorite parts, Tom. A lot of writers hate it.
I was going to say because
and,
writing is kind of a solitary kind of endeavor. You know, you go in a closed room somewhere and knock out like you when you were a kid with your typewriter from the attic.
Right.
And so that interaction thing so accessible. And it's you're getting into a couple of generations of readers now, and
maybe more than a couple.
Well, I was trying to be kind, Bob.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, Tom. I love coming out. I do a lot of traveling. I'm doing 1 million appearances this year in schools and libraries and book festivals and things. It's one of my favorite parts.
Well, I have to say I'm really honored and pleased to meet you and talk with you. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but I want to say happy 25th anniversary.
Oh, thanks. Thank you very much. Yeah, this was a lot of fun.
All right. Well, hopefully we can do it again, maybe when the movie comes out.
Terrific.
Take care.
Okay. Thanks, Tom. Take care.
You bet.
Bye-bye.
That was R.L., a.k.a. Bob Stine, the creator of the Goosebumps series, which turns 25 this year. An amazing, prolific career that R.L. Stine has had and is having, with a new Goosebumps movie coming out next year and much, much more. Anyway, we're going to take a short break. We'll be back with more of